in state and federal races this year, a significant boost to those efforts following record fundraising for her campaign this summer. Vice President believes that this race is about mobilizing the entire country in races at every level to fight for our freedoms and our economic opportunities. Now, that was a statement made by one of her campaign advisors. Also, campaign advisor O'Malley Dillon announced Sunday that the Harris-Walz campaign raised $540 million in just 6 weeks, leaving the Harris operation with more than 2,000 staff and 312 offices in the battleground states in partnership with the Democratic National Committee, a far bigger footprint than the Trump campaign, which has put less emphasis on field organizing. And years before he became the Republican vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance endorsed a little-noticed 2017 report by the Heritage Foundation that proposed a sweeping conservative agenda to restrict sexual and reproductive freedoms and remake American families. In a series of 29 separate essays, conservative commentators, policy experts, community leaders, and Christian clergy members oppose the spread of in vitro fertilization and other fertility treatments, describe those treatments as harmful to women. They praise the rapidly expanding number of state laws restricting abortion rights and access, saying that the procedure should become unthinkable. And they cited hunger as a great motivation for Americans to find work. And President Joe Biden on Monday said that he did not think Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had done enough to secure a hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, a comment that comes amid massive protests in Israel. Biden made the remark to reporters after a weekend during which the bodies of 6 hostages executed by Hamas were found in a Gaza tunnel. Among those discovered was the body of a 23-year-old American Israeli, Hirsch Goldberg Poland. His parents had publicly pled for the return of their son at the Democratic National Convention. The pair had brought their personal appeal to the DNC when they received, or while there, they received a standing ovation. And Democratic leaders in the House Oversight Committee today released a letter asking President Trump, President Trump, that is, if he ever illegally received money from the government of Egypt and whether money from Cairo played a role in a $10 million infusion into his 2016 run for president. And the British government today defended its decision to restrict some arms sales to Israel amid growing domestic and international criticism. We've made this legal judgment as a result of the process we're required to follow. That was a statement by British Defense Secretary John Healey. He said of the move to suspend 30 to 250 arms export licenses, where the government says there is a clear risk that the arms may be used in serious violation of international humanitarian law in Gaza. And Donald Trump yesterday, well, that was Sunday, that is, tried to defend himself from the criminal charges he's facing in the election interference cases. But experts said it sounded more like a confession. Trump was on Fox News and he was bragging that his poll numbers go up every time he's indicted. He said, whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with the presidential election where you have every right to do so. You get indicted and your poll numbers go up, he said. Experts said that is tantamount to a confession that he interfered in the election, which, despite him saying it's his right to do so, is illegal. And Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to unveil new proposals meant to boost small businesses and entrepreneurs. Now, this is ahead of a campaign speech on Wednesday that she's giving in New Hampshire. And in final news today, prosecutors in New York are urging the judge presiding over Donald Trump's hush money case not to allow his last-ditch effort to move that case to federal court or to delay proceedings in the historic state criminal case. Trump made a similar motion last year, which was denied. This time, his lawyers say the new Supreme Court decision on immunity gives him the right to have this case and all of his cases heard by federal judges. Well, we will see what the outcome of this new motion is. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, Dr. Larry Walker and Christopher Walton are joining me. These are veteran Democratic strategists, professors, and Chris is the former chair of the Milwaukee Democratic Party. And then in hour two, you know what we do? We go deep, we dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, today we're talking about how Zoom calls are fueling the Harris campaign. Dr. Caretha Mitchell, professor at Boston University, wrote a really intriguing article in Times Magazine just last week talking about identity politics and how these Zoom calls win with Black women, win with Black men, white women, white men, LGBTQ, Asian American, all of these great racial identity groups or different ethnic groups holding these Zoom calls. Years gone by, that would have been taboo. But today, Dr. Mitchell makes the case that leaning into one's identity is a good thing. And it is a powerful tool to use in a presidential election. So Dr. Mitchell is here to talk about that article, as well as Joteka Edie. Joteka is the founder of Full Circle Strategy. She's also the organizer of Win with Black Women. She, amongst her colleagues, after the announcement on July 21st that Joe Biden was stepping down, they organized, like in minutes, it seemed like, 40,000 Black women on a call that Sunday evening. Now, many people think that was almost magic on Joteka's part, but we're going to hear from her and hear about the years that she's been organizing and what she hoped to accomplish that night and what the Win with Black Women calls, which are happening weekly, are continuing to do as a part of the Harris Walls campaign. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But here's what I'm thinking about in this hour before I bring on my guest. In nearly every reputable poll, VP Kamala Harris is surging. She's surging ahead of former President Donald Trump. One poll released over the Labor Day weekend, everybody's been kind of waiting to see if she would get a bump from the DNC. And now we're finally getting some numbers. We're finally getting some poll results back to let us know what's happening in this race. And they are incredibly, incredibly positive for the vice president. In 2012, an ABC News poll had Obama up 1 point over Mitt Romney at the same point in the election cycle. Now, today, Harris is up 6 points in that same ABC News poll. Now, there are a lot of doubters, there are a lot of haters, and no matter how great Kamala Harris and Tim Walz continue to roll out their campaign, people in the news, online, are looking for ways to poke holes, to find fault, to criticize. And quite frankly, there's barely nothing to criticize. $540 million since July 21st, donating money to down ballot candidates. Donald Trump, as you know, is charging. Yes, he is charging folks who are using his name, his likeness, and his image. And I don't mean just regular folk. I mean folks who are on the ballot. Down ballot Republicans running for office have to pay Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris is saying, no. Not only are you not paying me, I'm going to donate to help your campaign. But there are doubters that are out there. They are pointing to the fact that when Trump was elected president in 2016, he was down in the polls. So they like to point to all of these reference points, historical reference points, to say, oh, don't get too excited about the polls because Donald Trump was down in previous polls, particularly in 2016, and he went on to win that election. But you should also note that Donald Trump lost in 2020. So as much as folks want to harken back to 2016, the most recent election is the one where Donald Trump in 2020. In this, like I said, ABC poll, Kamala Harris up by 6 points, 52% to 46%. That's among likely voters, 50 to 46 among all adults and registered voters. That's huge. Even a slight lead among voters, among all voters, but a full lead among likely voters. That's what's so important here. Not just the voters, but likely voters, those people who have historically gone to the polls. And then some other good news for the Harris team. not just voters across this country, but battleground states. We hear so much about those battleground states, the Electoral College, and how those battleground states are key. You can win the popular vote like Hillary Clinton did in 2016, but still lose the election. Donald Trump lost the popular vote in 2016, that is, and went on to win the election. But in those key battleground states, Harris is leading Donald Trump in 6 of the 7 battleground states. She's up by 2.4% in Michigan. She's up by 3.2% in Wisconsin. She's up by 1.5 in Pennsylvania. Nevada, she's up by 1 point. Georgia, she's up by 0.5 point. Arizona, she's up by 0.5 point. The only battleground state that Kamala Harris is not leading, that is in the state of North Carolina. But Trump in that state is only up by 0.03. So it is in the margin of error. So some would say there's a tie in the state of North Carolina. Donald Trump definitely shouldn't have a whole lot of confidence in those numbers, because that poll in North Carolina is so close. Here's some other good things coming out of this poll, these polling numbers, is 93%. That's a huge number. 93% of all Democrats and 56%, again, big numbers. This is overwhelmingly all Democrats, and 93%, we can basically say all Democrats, and a majority of independents at 56%. They rate Kamala Harris's campaign positively. Wow. Now, get this. Even 24% of Republicans give her a positive rating. So when you are rating positively with the other team, i.e. the Republicans, that's really good news. Across groups, most folks view Donald Trump's campaign as negative. Folks don't see his campaign as being nearly as positive. Only 13% of Democrats. I don't know who those 13% are. We'll ask Chris about that number. But even if you assume that number is accurate, I mean, there are 24%, nearly twice as many Republicans view Harris's campaign as positive as Republicans that review Trump's campaign. And then this independent numbers, only 38% of independents view Trump's campaign as positive. Again, Harris winning with independents at 56%. Now, some folks are saying that Harris, after the debate, could surge even more. We know those debates, Harris and Trump, are coming up next week, and there's a prediction that she could be ahead of Trump nationally and in battleground states coming out of that debate. Some think that lead could open up as much as 7 to 10%. That is astonishing. July 21st, Kamala Harris said, "I'm throwing my hat into the ring to be your next president." And pollsters are expecting her to be up by as much as 7 to 10% by next week. One final stat I think is so important to note. You know, we hear a lot about Donald Trump being this populist candidate and winning with uneducated, rural voters, white voters, uneducated voters. Well, in this poll, those voters, and we're going to equate education here with income, but those folks with an annual income of less than $20,000. So these are people who are struggling in our country. $20,000. You can barely pay your rent, barely put food on the table. Wow. Trump had a 3-point edge over Joe Biden with those voters. Kamala Harris now. This number is almost hard to believe. They're saying Kamala Harris has a 23-point advantage over Trump in August with those voters. If that number is true, that means that Kamala Harris's message about helping lift up people out of poverty and lift up those in the middle class is resonating. That's a huge number. I got to check that myself. That's such a gigantic number. But I think all in all, the good news is Harris is polling way ahead of Donald Trump, and that much must make him very, very nervous. So much so that on Labor Day, he was not out campaigning, whereas Kamala Harris was out with Joe Biden. So maybe he's getting the message. Stay with us when we come forward. More of today's news right here on KBLA 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 Years Later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition. With powerful new contributions from today's leading voices, this 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America, 20 Years Later, today.
So the thing no one tells you about periods is that your flow changes every day, and so should your tampon size. Tampax has 5 absorbencies to match your changing flow. If it's uncomfortable to remove, go down a size. If it leaks, go up a size. And only Tampax has a leak guard braid to help give you up to 100% leak and odor-free protection. All-day comfort and protection for up to 8 hours for under $5 a month. Based on average U.S. consumer usage at manufacturer's suggested price, however, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer, excludes 8-count pack.
Mommy, want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Single Moms Planet is a nonprofit organization dedicated to uplifting under-resourced single mom business owners and working mothers nationwide. Single Moms Planet offers comprehensive programs of financial literacy, business development, mentorship, and entrepreneurial training. They provide education, accountability, and hope. Single Moms Planet was founded by model, TV personality, and producer Nefertari Plessy. Nefertari felt firsthand the challenges that face single moms as she was raised by a working single mother. She learned that the most disadvantaged group in the United States are single mom families. According to the U.S. Census, 30% live under the poverty line. So she decided to do something about it, along with co-founder Cole Patterson. Their goal is to end the poverty cycle in single mother households through education, opportunity, and networking, providing family and child enrichment programs for under-resourced single-parent families. Single Moms Planet serves over 10,000 single moms and their children each year. Studies show that business development and financial literacy provide a positive environment for children and families, exposing them to new possibilities and opportunities. To attend one of their fun events, make a donation, or get more information, or if you need help as a single mom, please visit singlemomsplanet.org. That's singlemomsplanet.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, I am back. And in this hour, Dr. Larry Walker, Christopher Walton are here. And it's a big news day today. Yesterday was Labor Day. And we saw, Chris, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on the campaign trail. Hadn't seen them together in a while. Again, that great chemistry. Joe Biden saying the decision to select Kamala Harris as vice president was one of the best decisions he's made in his political life. And we see some just incredible poll numbers. But there was something else happening over the weekend, and I'm sure you and Dr. Walker saw it, heard about it, or may have even participated in it. And there was this big debate going on online. Tyrese, actor, singer, making this statement that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden enacted some kind of anti-Asian anti-hate crime bill targeted for Asians, but did not do the same for African Americans. And there's all this back and forth, Roland Martin and others trying to disabuse him of that very false and ignorant statement. And then there was Ice Cube online telling Black folks not to vote. So it was a weird social media weekend, particularly as it relates to Black men. I got a text from a friend scared to death saying, oh my God, Black men are saying that Trump's going to give them checks and that Kamala's not strong enough to face world leaders. Help us make sense of all this online activity involving your brothers and your cousins.
I'm not. I'm gonna let them sit as who they are because if you understand crazy, you might be crazy. I'm not even gonna help them on that. What I am going to do is let's refocus this. What we're seeing is people who don't really know what they're talking about taking the field. Misinformation and disinformation is actively being pushed out there in our communities, especially. And it's really sad because when you look at the facts of these issues, there was a hate crime bill that President Biden signed at the beginning of his administration. Yes, that was focused toward the Asian community. You know what was also a hate crime bill that was passed and signed into law under this administration that was focused toward the Black community? The anti-lynching law, the Emmett Till bill. There was also other pieces of legislation that have been moving forward, focusing on diversity and equity and inclusion. That thing Republicans keep trying to go against and have removed from jobs and government policies. So yeah, no, I'm not even going to deal with this foolishness. If you want to listen to Tyrese for your political advice, go right ahead. But I encourage you to not, because clearly Tyrese doesn't know what Tyrese is talking about. And there are much more educated people who can actually explain things to you. This kind of goes back to that same line they were saying around President Biden and HBCUs. Well, he didn't give money President Trump gave money to the HBCUs. President Biden didn't give any money. Trump gave 90 million with an M. Trump gave 90 million. Well, you know what? Joe Biden gave 6.9 billion with a B. If you don't understand numbers, just say it. You don't have to go out there and make yourself look crazy. We understand. But what we're seeing here and what has been a factual case, we've seen Vice President Harris on the international stage talking with Chancellor of Germany, talking with people who actually do this work. And she has been constantly welcomed in. She has been constantly supported. She has constantly made a name for herself. Most recently, when she spoke at the Munich Security Conference, that is literally the security conference where the entire world comes together and state, no, this is what we're doing. This is where we are. This is how we stand. She's been there on the forefront, and she was part of the instrumental part of bringing the negotiation where we ended up getting those hostages back from Russia who were falsely imprisoned. How much more do you need? Or just say you don't like women. If that's what it is, that's fine. Just say it so we can ignore you and move you off the stage.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. Not much else we should say about Tyrese, but let me ask you this, Larry. Ice Cube, we've seen this before. And, Chris's point is a good point, is we need to look who we're taking advice from, political advice in particular, because some of the folks that are out there trying to give political advice aren't the folks that we should be taking it from. But what do you continue to make of these guys, these African-American guys? They know what they're doing. I can't believe they don't know the facts on some of these points. I mean, you got D.L. Hughley, you got Anthony Anderson. You have so many of what I'll call these guys as contemporaries that are out on the campaign trail talking about Kamala Harris, talking about the record. So why do they persist in this kind of conduct? And I know you're not a psychologist, but I don't know, you are a Black man, so you might get something that I'm missing.
Yeah, Areva. So yeah, I'm a brother, and listen to Ice Cube and a lot of these artists growing up, and I do have some thoughts about this. I thought about this a lot. Had conversations with a lot of Black men and Black women about this. So it reminds me of a song Public Enemy had called "Who Stole the Soul," and that talked more about how hip hop music was becoming mainstream. But I highlight that because Ice Cube, obviously, his history in hip hop, and certainly one of the great 90s rappers without a doubt. His work with NWA and his work as an independent artist. But I think what's going on here is, I think we really dig down, and Chris hit on it, is that there are a lot of Black men who have antiquated views of Black women. And I really think we need to really, as brothers, need to talk about that. I also want to highlight that Ice Cube, Tyrese, and some of these other brothers, they're outliers, because the majority of brothers I'm talking to are certainly not having these, or not asserting that somehow the Biden-Harris administration has not done work to positively impact the Black community. I want to highlight the more than $2 billion that went to Black farmers and their descendants. And I want to say something about that as an example, Areva. I know you're in California. We're having a conversation about reparations, and I know we've gotten Vice President Harris pulled in here. I want to say something to folks who are listening. This $2 billion is essentially reparations, but don't tell anybody. I don't think people realize that essentially what it is reparations. So, as we have a conversation about what does VP Harris believe, Is she capable of being a leader? We talk about some of these rap artists and also about what she's done for Black women, and I'm connected to what's happening in California. She believes in reparations. You just won't hear her say it. What they're doing is trying to close the racial wealth gap. But the $2 billion plus is an example of reparations played to Black folks and the descendants of Black farmers. That's essentially what it is.
No doubt about it. And we're seeing evidence of reparations being paid in so many instances. You're right. We're not calling it reparations. That word is divisive for a lot of people. It's triggering for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, when you are giving that kind of money or any money to someone who has suffered some kind of racial harm, that is exactly what you are doing. I don't know. What I told my friend who sent me that, who's very worried, is don't worry about those outliers, as you call them. I think that's the correct term. Stay focused. So I said, look at what the Harris team is doing online. The social media is fire. And if people want to take time and argue with Tyrese and try to correct him, they're more than free to do that. But I agree with you, Larry. The majority of Black men that I'm talking to understand that Donald Trump is a threat to the Black community, has done nothing to support the Black community, and is giving no evidence that he plans to do anything. He's making empty promises like the statements he's making around reproductive freedom and abortion rights, trying to convince us now that he wants the government to pay for IVF, and that he wants the states to decide abortion, and that he would kill any kind of federal abortion bill that was sent to his desk, and even flirted with the idea of allowing abortions up to 6 weeks. So he's all over the place on abortion because, quite frankly, he doesn't care about anything. All he cares about, we know right now, is his freedom. And I do mean his literal freedom, his ability not to be imprisoned. That seems to be fueling this campaign as much as anything. When we come forward, we got to talk about these positive poll numbers. These poll numbers, like I said, the last number about her turning around those voters making under 20,000, I could barely believe that myself. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
Right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Marylanders appear to be happy with the job Black Governor Wes Moore is doing. A new Gonzalez research poll puts Moore's approval rating at 64%, 6 points higher than a similar poll in February. About 24% disapprove of the governor's job performance and 12% are unsure. The poll found 82% of Democrats, 35% of Republicans, and 52% of independent voters give high marks to Moore. The Washington Department of Commerce has awarded $29 million in grants to support housing initiatives, and a local organization, Take Up the Cause, will receive a portion of those funds. The group works to make housing more affordable in Spokane. Take Up the Cause is part of the Black Home Ownership Spokane cohort, which is already helping 13 people with down payment assistance and affordable home ownership programs. With an $809,000 grant, the organization plans to launch a new debt paydown program for Black homeowners, aiming to overcome high debt-to-income ratios that often block access to home ownership. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Trouble in downtown is ahead if you're headed onto the 10 West before Alameda Street, as the center lane is blocked with an accident and heavy delays coming from the 5-101 interchange. On-ramp in Long Beach is currently blocked by a crash on the 91 East from Cherry Avenue, with over 25 minutes running heavy from the 110. In East LA, center lane is still blocked with a stall on the 5 South at Olympic Boulevard, with a 15 to 20 minute backup from Highway 60. Also, 101 South at Van Nuys Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, watch for a stall blocking the center lane, with heavy traffic under 10 minutes from White Oak Avenue.
It's Mattress Firm's best sale of the year. Get a Sleepy's Queen mattress at the lowest price ever, just $89.99. Offer ends Tuesday. In-store pickup only. Hurry and stop by Mattress Firm during their Labor Day sale.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The National Football League is approaching a very special milestone this season. When the regular season kicks off Thursday night, an unprecedented 15 teams will be starting a Black quarterback. That's almost half of the NFL's 32 teams. Here are the 15 Black quarterbacks we will see in the starting lineup this week. Jacoby Brissett, New England Patriots. Rookie Jaden Daniels, Washington Commanders. Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia Eagles. Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens. Jordan Love, Green Bay Packers. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs. Kyler Murray, Arizona Cardinals. Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys. Anthony Richardson, Indianapolis Colts. Geno Smith, Seattle Seahawks. CJ Stroud, Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson, Cleveland Browns. Rookie Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears, Russell Wilson, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Bryce Young, Carolina Panthers. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
The moment we've all been waiting for has finally arrived. On Tuesday, September 10th at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will square off in their first ever presidential debate. KBLA Talk 1580 and the Empowerment Congress are hosting a viewing party, and we're inviting you to join us for an evening of civic engagement, great food, and good vibes. Our studio space is limited, but if you would like to join us, just go to our website at KBLA1580.com and register for your chance to watch this historic presidential debate with us. Years from now, we're all likely to remember exactly where we were when this pivotal moment in American politics unfolded. So, register for your chance to join us by going to KBLA1580.com right now. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit LAFLA.org. LAFLA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
And Christopher Walton. And in hour 2, we are going to be talking about these Zoom calls. Not only the hundreds of thousands of people who've gotten on a Zoom call to support Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, but also all the money that they've been raising. And these aren't one-time calls. Jateka Edie, who is the founder of Full Circle Strategy and the organizer of Win with Black Women, she's doing weekly calls. And these calls have, 10 or 12 special guests, elected officials, celebrities, community leaders from so many different areas across the country. And they are continuing to galvanize literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. Dr. Coretha Mitchell, who's a professor at Boston University, was so intrigued by these calls. She wrote a very insightful article for Times Magazine about what we are witnessing in real time. So make sure you stick around to hear what is Jateka's, what is her strategy of getting, 40,000 plus women on a call, and how do you keep that momentum going? How do you sustain it, over the next 60 plus days of this campaign? All right, Dr. Walker, we are seeing some incredible poll numbers. We were all waiting to see if there'd be a bump coming out of the DNC. Typically, a candidate after their convention, they get a couple of points of a bump because everybody's excited about them in that moment. We didn't see the traditional bump coming out of the DNC, at least it wasn't reported in the polls, but we are now seeing this incredible lead that Kamala Harris is opening up. And folks being these pollsters and pundits are saying, look, if she does what we think she's going to do next week at that debate, that poll, I mean, her numbers could open up to a 10-point lead. We have not seen anything like this, particularly given the short nature of this campaign. What do you make of this?
Yeah, so, I think that we have to continue to do the work, get GOTV, get out the vote. And so, I think that polls have a role, but 10 points for any presidential election I would be surprised to see that, just because how polarized the country is. But I think that one of the key things that we're seeing is, and I saw some numbers from various states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, among others, is that you're seeing an increase of women who registered to vote since VP Harris was, that announced that she was going to be the nominee. In addition to that, you're seeing also not only women, but individuals under the age of 25 who are registered to vote. In some cases, individuals who had never voted before. So I think that one of the things, even though the polls, so it's in my opinion, it's still statistically a tie. I think she's going to win this election based on the fact that there are a number of women and also new voters who are going to vote for her and put her over the top in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and some of the states that I've mentioned. The only thing I think the thing that I worry about is polls don't account for racism and sexism. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, when it comes down to this election, we see tomorrow she's going to talk about a small business plan that she has for, and continue to improve the economy. When you look at the policy issues and also the experience, it's night and day. And so it really comes down to, can white women and white people overall make decisions voting for someone who will certainly support policies that improve their lives.
So, Chris, we know polls, and again, they're notoriously wrong. And depending on the day, I don't know how I feel about them. Sometimes I'm excited about them. Other times I'm really discouraged. And Kamala Harris's own, one of her super PACs, Future Forward, said, look, don't pay attention to those polls. Their sample size is too small. They're not talking to enough people. They're saying our internal polling has this race pretty tight. It says we talked to 350,000 people, not 1,000. And obviously, they are doing the kind of polling that's going to fuel where they spend their money in this campaign. But with all that said, it must feel good to wake up and be the person with the polling numbers that are higher than your opponent. But what do you tell voters about these polls? Because you want to keep people enthused, but you also want to keep them motivated to do the work.
Right. Same thing I tell everybody. When I get a brand new poll, gets texted me every day just about. And I'm like, okay, throw it in the average. Don't any single poll. Look, enjoy those polls. I love to see the polls come out where she's up 3 or 4 points here in Wisconsin. That's a landslide in Wisconsin. If we win by 3 or 4 points, this thing is done. But throw it in the average. Do not take any single poll as the end all be all definitive. We're not down, we're not up, we're running for another 60-something days. That's what we're doing. All those polls, throw them in the average them out, see where everybody lands, and we'll see what it looks like on election night. But until we get that check mark, and we're going to get that check mark, we go from there. Don't take any of these single polls.
No, that's good advice. We have to be diligent. But obviously, for someone to have turned a race around, the Democrats thought they were losing hands down, to generate this kind of excitement, and these poll numbers says that she's doing something right. I don't think I've talked to you, Professor, since she sat down for that CNN interview with Dana Bash. A lot of criticism, both of the CNN anchor, some criticism of Harris. What did you make of that interview?
I thought overall, to be honest with you, I thought Dana Bash, I thought she was super fine. I mean, I do think, I think that we've become overly sensitive to any questions in overall, particularly considering how, Donald Trump often gets these softball interviews and or lies, completely lies without any fact check during interviews. And so, I know people were upset about him talking about her race or ethnicity. But to be honest, as a journalist, it's a legitimate question in my opinion. And also, people were upset about that. But I thought Dana Bash did fine. I mean, I thought she tried to push her on some issues. I did think that she could have asked her more policy relevant issues. But I think that's a more of an issue with journalism from mainstream outlets today, is that they failed to, ask more important questions that quote unquote middle America cares about, and they were more responding, particularly the Republican talking points about certain issues like they have no relevance. Also, let me add that I thought the VP handled the question about Trump question on race and ethnicity very well, and simply saying to move on. She didn't give it any oxygen.
Hold on a second there. I want to get Chris to weigh in on that. Chris, she got a lot of critique from some folks. They said, "Oh, missed opportunity. She should have, gone in on that. She should have talked about, her black creds." And what do you think? Larry Walker says she did the right thing. She said, "Move on. Nothing here to see."
Absolutely. I completely agree with Dr. Walker, because honestly, what value does that bring? I don't have to prove to you my blackness. I am a black woman, is what Kamala Vice President Harris would say. We don't have to question that. Honestly, that's my job. She went to Howard. She was raised as a black woman, her and her black sister. Her black job that she is constantly doing every day, and everybody keeps challenging her whether she has any value in doing it, she's doing it well. That's for people like me to go ahead and fight that fight. She's being president. That's what she's doing. Her job is to be presidential. No, you don't go into the mud, because you go into a mud fight with a pig, you're going to lose. We're looking at that situation with Donald Trump. It's not worth her time. Leave me. I'll fight in the mud for her.
Areva, can I jump in at one?
No,
one
go
thing?
come back. Absolutely.
I mean, listen, and I'm a little biased. I went to Howard for graduate school, so I should acknowledge that. But listen, Chris hit on something here. I don't think people outside the black community understand the relevance of going to Howard, the Mecca, pledging the D9 organization. I'm an alpha man, pledging the D9 organization above ground in the 80s, right? So in DC during a time where it was Chocolate City. Now it's Mocha City, but now it was Chocolate City in the 80s. I don't think people understand the context of that coming from California and what that means in terms of when we talk about black culture. The other thing is people have an understanding of the diaspora. I met my wife at Howard University. She's originally from Jamaica. That doesn't make her less black than Kamala Harris or any other black person in America. So we have to talk about the diaspora when we talk about blackness.
And picking back it off of that, I'm a black man from Wisconsin. Every time I get on a conversation to meet somebody new, they're black. The first question I get is, there black people in Wisconsin? There's more than 10 of us, but yes, there are black people in Wisconsin. We are not all the same. And they hate that because they don't understand the beauty of what makes us who we are. And just because you don't understand that and you are incompetent and incapable of understanding that does not mean you're right. Kamala Harris is a black woman. She's a South Asian woman. She is both things. You can be more than one, just like you can be dumb and stupid at the same time. Donald Trump proves that every single day.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you guys. And obviously, as a black woman, who wants to sit around and try to explain to people, how, when you became black, are you black, etc. But I did have a white friend who sent me a text and who said she wishes she would have explained that more. And I'm going to very gently defend my friend's comment, because I'm going to say there are some people that are not as enlightened as the three of us are, that may not appreciate that someone from Jamaica, their father from Jamaica, their mother's from India, is still black and can be considered and should be considered black. So I just think my white friend was saying, I know you guys get it, but there's some of us who really love her. And we're trying to explain this to our friends who make these comments. So sometimes things just need explaining. And you're right, Chris. There are other people in the campaign's orbit, surrogates, that can do that for those independents and those conservative Democrats that maybe don't understand that. And they've been peppered with the birther, nonsense surrounding Barack Obama. So I just think, again, we have to make sure in this election that we're not leaving folks behind. And it's stupid a question as that seems to us that have known her, that do know her, that understand the significance of Howard and being an AKA and, having her black sister and her black nieces and all of that. There are some folks who don't get it, and we do want to make sure that they do get it. When we come forward, talk about JD Vance. Folks are saying that Sarah Palin should hand over her crown as the worst VP pick ever in the history of this country, and that she ought to give that crown to JD Vance because they say this guy is bad news. And some firefighters in Boston had a whole lot to say about that subject. When we come forward, KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh, man. Looks like Bobby needs a ride to the airport again.
Grab the keys.
Who's taking Auntie and her friends to the swap meet?
Grab the keys.
How about we drop these boxes off at Miss Johnson?
Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, you're all about getting things done. So do it all in a Chevy SUV. From the versatile Equinox and sporty Blazer to the roomy Traverse, our lineup of SUVs will carry you through every adventure. All you have to do is
grab the keys.
That's how we do. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Malibu, Colorado, Blazer, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Traverse limited models. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 15.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 7/1/24.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent. So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle.
Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle. This back-to-school season, Tide and Downy are giving back with $1.5 million in scholarships. Enter to win. No purchase necessary. US/DC 17+. End September 30th. Rules. Tide.com/scholarship/official rules.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. JD Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in-store. And now, during our biggest sale of the year, save 50%. Limited edition smart bed. Limited time. For JD Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
JD Vance, an ABC News poll released on Sunday, has his favorability rating at negative 12%. If you Google articles about him, there's some saying that, Sarah Palin once wore the crown or should have worn the crown for the worst VP pick ever, and that she now is looking pretty good and should give that crown to JD Vance. He went into a Boston Hall of Union firefighters last week. He went on Thursday. Tim Walz was there on Wednesday. He was initially booed. There was some cheering. Then the crowd kind of cooled out, chilled out. He talked about respect for firefighters. They saved his mother's life. She was having a drug crisis of some sort. So they clapped for that. That was good. But then he went a step too far, Dr. Walker. He said that he and Trump were the most pro-union ticket ever. And that's when the crowd said, man, are you nuts? And they booed him basically off the stage. Now, Tim Walz had been there the day earlier. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris have endorsements from a myriad of unions. Trump has two. They are the Wisconsin police officers, and then the International Association of Police. I'm getting it wrong, but basically it's cops, cop unions. There are only two supporting them. Why would Larry, why would this man go in and say that they are the most pro-union party ticket ever, knowing that Trump has been the worst president ever as it relates to labor unions?
Well, you know, a lot of these lies don't get fact checked. So why? I mean, that's the reason why Vance and Trump continue with these falsehoods. I mean, they keep telling them. And listen, when you go before, you know, a union, you know, and you know, Labor Day, celebrating Labor Day, and then once again, like, and there, remember Project 2025, not only times it wants to get rid of overtime, but also wants to help make it easier for states to decertify unions. Okay, and these these other laws to make it difficult for unions to negotiate on behalf of workers. So essentially, we'll see the end of unions if he gets reelected. So this idea that somehow they're the most pro-union or pro-worker anything, pro-woman anything, is ridiculous. And so he deserved to be booed because it suggests something like this in a state like Massachusetts that has very, very strong unions. The idea that they're super pro-union and more pro-union than anyone else. I mean, this can't even wrap my mind around that when all the policies that they would support will essentially eliminate unions and make the lives of working class and middle class Americans far more difficult than they need to be.
Well, you know, one thing, Chris, this guy has done is he's proven that he knows the audience of one that he has to play to. And he's willing to be the attack dog. He's willing to be the liar. He's willing to be all of those things that we know Donald Trump really favors in anyone that's running next to, or doing anything with him. And I think you're right, Professor Walker. They tell so many lies and they don't know which ones will get checked, which ones will become truth for some people. But in a union hall, to say that when these union leaders know it's Joe Biden. Now, this firefighters union has not endorsed either candidate as of yet, but this J.D. Vance is really turning out to be one of the worst. They're comparing him not only to Sarah Palin, but to poor Tim Kaine. And Tim Kaine wasn't a liar. Tim Kaine was just the most probably, boring candidate that any presidential, candidate can pick. But it seems like J.D. Vance is getting worse.
That's who he is. He is, I don't know what he gets into. I don't want to speak on his personal life, even though he makes sure he binds everybody else's personal life. What happens between him and that couch is between him and that couch.
Well, they say that's a conspiracy theory that Democrats are spreading, Chris.
Oh. Him and that couch is between him and that couch. They got nothing to do with me. But he's awful. This is literally a man who started his career off of creating a nonprofit to take the money in to prepare him to run for political office. He did nothing with the money. He just took the money in and used it to run for office. He's not a serious man. Donald Trump is not a serious man. Neither of them needs to be within 10 square miles of the White House, let alone president and vice president of the United States. And they show it every single day. And as a matter of fact, for them to be the most pro-worker union candidates to ever run, where was everybody at yesterday? Where was everybody at yesterday? Because I know the vice president was in Detroit and in Pittsburgh. Governor Walz was in Milwaukee and Minneapolis. Second gentleman was down in Virginia and Newport News. We didn't see a lot of the most
pro-union folks, huh? On Labor Day. That's kind of ironic.
Right. So, America, there is no education in the second kick of a mule.
Well, you know what? Let me just say this. J.D. Vance is the first non-incumbent vice presidential nominee to have a net negative favorable rating after a convention since 1980.
Wow.
So he came out of the convention after you're supposed to be like really rallying the troops. He comes out with a negative favorability
because he gave such a terrible acceptance speech. And honestly, I'm really disappointed in him as a millennial. You are the first millennial on a national ticket, and you are going to make it real hard for the rest of us to ever get on there again. Because you, sir, are just the weirdest person to ever grace the national television. So, and that's saying something, man. You're standing behind Donald Trump, and you're the drag. How is that possible?
Well, you know what? You raised a really good point, Dr. Walker. I'll give you the last word on this. We forget J.D. Vance. He doesn't seem like a millennial, but he is. He's only 39 years old. So he's one of the youngest VP picks ever. But as to Chris's point, he doesn't seem to be representing for millennials. He has a lot of views that are really anachronistic and what you would think would be more associated with a man in his 70s or 80s. Just real quickly, what do you make of J.D. Vance?
Yeah, we continue to see these comments he's made over the last couple of years that are anti-women. Let's just call it what it is. And I read Hillbilly Elegy, and I wonder if these are rooted in, I'm going to leave it as family dynamics. I'll just leave it that and let people decide what it is. But he's got some issues with women that comes from somewhere, and they're dangerous, and that's why we have to make sure we get the Harris Wallace, both of them elected in November.
Well, I think you're right. When you look at that Heritage Foundation report where he co-signed on it in 2017, he does have some really weird, unorthodox views of American families. And sure, a lot of that had to do with how he grew up and the trauma that he experienced. His mother, who was addicted to drugs, living in a home where there was a lot of domestic violence. He thinks the only homes for children should be heterosexual, pretty much white men and women. And if you don't look like that as a family, he does not recognize you as a family. And apparently that's what he longed for in his upbringing that he never had. All right, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Larry. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. When we come forward, we're going to be talking about those Zoom calls that are raising millions and millions of dollars and galvanizing millions of voters across this country. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
All right, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Ooh.